people who are prescribing GLP-1s, or people who are looking after patients who are on them, like myself, will be very aware of the fact that there is malnourishment happening as a result of GLP-1s. There's malnourishment that often happens as a result of lots of different diets. Of course, we've gone through different fads over the decades, like people only eating protein, or people only eating this or only eating that. That's why doctors are so anti fad diets, versus sort of health influencers who may recommend these things.
Welcome to the Wellness Report. My name is Susan Owens. Today we're going to be discussing the recent research that GLP-1 medications may have a side effect of hair loss and the actual science behind that. Joining me to talk about this is Dr. Ellie Cannon. She is a prominent GP both in the NHS and the private sector, and she's a medical columnist. Why don't we just kick off with the facts of the situation? So what is the research into this hair loss side effect actually saying?
It's not so much research, it's just sort of what we know medically that happens with the weight loss injections, so the GLP-1s. So obviously a lot of people have noticed as a side effect that they have hair loss. And that's been sort of quite, I suppose, surprising to the patients using them. Probably not so surprising to people who are prescribing them, though. So there's lots of reasons why people would lose their hair with GLP-1s. We always see hair loss when people have a lot of weight loss. So it's very typical, for example, when fasting diets were quite fashionable, we saw lots of people lose their hair. And the real word for that is telogen effluvium. So it's like literally sort of like shedding of the hair. And it comes from when the body is under physical stress and when it's under some emotional stress as well. It can be because of nutrients as well. So obviously we know that people who take weight loss injections have a very dramatic change to their diet. So there's a huge drop in the amount of protein that they take in the amount of good calories they take in, and also like quite important minerals that are really good for your hair. So particularly iron, which is very good for your hair, and zinc. So if you're suddenly dropping all of those, then your hair goes into a different phase. So it goes really into a very, very sort of like quiet and then a shedding phase, which we think is why people notice so much hair loss with GLPs.
Is this a side effect that we're kind of seeing from a lot of rapid weight loss in general? So like if two people were dieting, but one of them is taking this medication and the other one is dieting, say like the traditional way, would we kind of see this result either way?
Well, it's less so much to do with the dieting and what you're actually doing to lose the weight, and more to do with how fast it is and actually what you are taking in. So, for example, if you were losing weight pretty slowly, and if you were actually having a decent amount of iron and zinc and protein, as I said, it may be possible that you wouldn't notice this weight loss, this hair loss, sorry. But when you are losing vast amounts of weight very quickly, we always see this type of hair loss. And also when people have nutritional deficiencies, which we're definitely seeing with GLP-1. So things like the iron, the zinc, the protein, the calories, to be honest, your body is just not going to prioritize hair growth. So we're always going to see it. So are we seeing it more with GLP-1s versus old-fashioned diets? Probably, but that has probably got more to do with the speed at which people lose weight.
Right, okay. So is there kind of an element, I'm trying to think of maybe a better word, like a less sensationalized word for this, but like almost people are almost like malnourishing their body in a sense of like by kind of taking away the need to eat, you're kind of forgetting that your body needs those nutrients as well, and maybe
Mm.
that's, I mean, this I'm sure isn't the only side effect. That is probably a result of a lack of nutrients. I know that people I know maybe that have taken this medication have also said like their blood sugar, they're not realizing obviously that it's dipping, or and it's meaning that they're like emotionally reacting to things. Do you think that we're kind of going to end up with people that are kind of simultaneously dealing with obesity and also malnourishment as well?
Well, obesity is a form of malnourishment in the true sense of the
Okay.
word. And absolutely, I mean, this is absolutely what is already happening. People who are prescribing GLP-1s, or people who are looking after patients who are on them, like myself, will be very aware of the fact that there is malnourishment happening as a result of GLP-1s. There's malnourishment that often happens as a result of lots of different diets. Of course, we've gone through different fads over the
Mm.
decades, like people only eating protein, or people only eating this or only eating that. That's why doctors are so anti fad diets, versus sort of health influencers who may recommend these things. But of course, yeah, we will see people who are malnourished. We always have done with people who are on diets, particularly with those essential nutrients, like iron, like the vitamins, like things like zinc, protein. There's been a lot of work already done on trying to encourage people to eat well while they're on a GLP-1.
Mm.
But the interesting thing with the GLP-1 is that it's not just a diet. Obviously, it's not a diet at all. It's absolutely changing people's relationship with food and changing their idea of what they want to eat. And many people even struggle to eat with a GLP. So if you only fancy having sort of one meal a day, it's very hard to make that one meal a day as nutrient dense and vitamin dense and calorie dense as possible.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot of people that I would know that would take the medication, they're kind of down to one meal a day, and I suppose it's depending on which meal of the day that you're having is what nutrients you're really getting from that. I suppose like there is obviously supplements that you can take for these things, but do you kind of then end up in a cycle of taking almost like a cocktail of supplements rather than getting the nutrients from the source? Is that kind of what you see as maybe being the next stage of this? Is if people want to avoid eating, they'll just end up taking supplements after supplements to go along with their GLP-1.
Yeah, it's a really pertinent point, and it's, quite frightening, really, when you think that people might be on a GLP-1 and then not having enough good, decent food, that they're also turning to a supplement as well. We're really sort of moving away from eating
Yeah.
anything normal, or sort of wholesome at all. So I think I would always encourage people that. Um, Whole foods are always best as opposed to supplements. We know that sort of the holistic nature of fruit and veg, because they don't just have vitamins in, but they've also got fiber and they've also got carbohydrate, and that sort of holistic nature of real food, of whole foods, is so important. I'm sure there are many people who are taking supplements because they're on GLPs, and that's better than not taking anything at all and also not having whole
Mm.
foods. But it's always going to be best to be trying to have small and very nutrient dense meals. And there's many books out now that can sort of help you with that, about how to eat well when you're on a GLP-1.
If we could just kind of veer slightly into this idea of supplements and almost like self-medicating, I just know that as someone who's like relatively young, like myself on the internet, like all of my ads seem to be about some sort of gummy supplement, and then now in more recent times the GLP-1s, and like how potentially dangerous do you think that could be for someone who's like the average person like me who has kind of no no background in obviously medical stuff, but as well as like nutrition and these kind of things I'm very much learning as I go as an adult. And I'm just basically being told on the internet, like, oh, just take this gummy and that'll help you with this, or try this, or do this, or do this. And I just know that, especially like I didn't grow up with access to the NHS, so I'm just thinking like I don't think I had a blood test until I was maybe like 17 or 18. I just can't really imagine knowing what I was deficient in, and then seeing a TikTok ad saying, "Oh, you just take a load of these gummies and you'll be fine." Like how dangerous are we now in this kind of like self-medicating almost kind of area of life now?
Your question hits on my chosen specialized subject.
Ah.
So, I mean, the health and wellness industry globally is worth £5 trillion. So that's more than smartphones and electric cars and social media. And the majority of what you just described, which was a perfect description of people's experience now on social media, the majority of what you just described is absolutely not health advice. It's purely
Yeah.
consumerism. So the people trying to sell you those vitamin gummies, the people trying to sell you, sort of at my age, I sort of get sold or try to be sold a lot of collagen. And
Mm.
men are sold sort of various things to do with muscles and testosterone and all of that. The people selling those things are purely commercial entities. It's purely consumerism. It's got absolutely nothing to do with health. It's a very unregulated industry. I heard somebody say there's more regulation in a supermarket sandwich than in those supplements that you're being sold, which is sort of very good illustration of what we're dealing with. None of these things have anything to do with your health. There are certain vitamins that doctors definitely recommend, as an example, vitamin D,
Mm.
which everybody should be taking in the winter. There are definitely supplements that people would be advised to take because they have a certain health problem. So, for example, of course, if you're iron deficient, of course, we're prescribing you iron. But the majority of what you just described has absolutely nothing to do with your health and is not proven to help you in any way. It's not
Yeah.
proven to add any longevity. So it's a fascinating area. There's quite a few sort of doctors and experts now within this space. There's some books written now on this idea that because of the social media platforms that you've spoken about, we are being sold all of these different cons about our health.
It is quite concerning because I think I have definitely fallen down the rabbit hole of suddenly going,
Yeah,
well, I don't know what ashwagandha is, but is that something that I should be
yeah,
taking? Like, you know, you just have kind of no concept. And I think like they kind of get you in the sense that they say, oh, are you tired all the time? Are
yeah.
you, you know, feeling like this? Are you feeling like that? And it's kind of almost just like a blanket thing that lots of people might feel at the end of a long day before they've had dinner. And
Yeah.
yeah, I guess you just got kind of lost in like what really you should be and shouldn't be taking.
Well, that's exactly right. Yeah, you've just described it absolutely perfectly. The sort of marketing that occurs on social media, which you just described, or online, is incredibly clever. It's almost sort of based on old-fashioned cons and scams and
Mm,
sort of almost pyramid schemes. You know, you have a group of people who are effectively liars trying to sell these things to you, and then you have a group of people as yourself, you know, who become believers, and it's very quick to
yeah.
become a believer, as you've just said, when you're vulnerable. But also the way social media works, because of the algorithm, is, you know, it's all very sort of personalized, as if it's really directed towards you. It speaks to you very well. So it's incredibly clever, and as you've said, it's incredibly dangerous.
I do feel like, obviously, I don't see maybe stuff that are targeted at men, which I imagine is kind of honing in on this idea of you need to look a certain way, you need to be bulked out, you need X, Y, Z.
Mm,
But I know that,
mm,
like, from the
mm.
female perspective, it's a lot of, oh, well, you're heading towards this age, so you need to think about this. I mean, like, I got an
Mm.
Instagram ad the other day that was about freezing your eggs. So they really do kind of like hone in on your age group, and they do get you in that kind of way. But it's also like, yeah, women all need XYZ, all this kind of stuff, and it's maybe things I've never heard of.
Yeah, and it's very clever the way it's done. I did some work a couple of years ago on exactly what you just said, the egg freezing situation. So egg freezing is interesting because actually egg freezing, although it can be successful for some people, if you look at it as a scientific sort of technology or a treatment that you might offer someone, it's actually not really a great technology. So the success rates for people to actually get eggs are not great. And also, that's not obviously the end point that anybody wants. The end point that somebody wants from egg freezing is to protect their fertility and to go on to have a baby. And actually, if you look at the rates down the line, they're really, you know, they're really sort of like not great. And there's a whole group of women now, again, as you just sort of alluded to, who've really been made to believe because of social media that they will struggle to have a baby and have almost been conned into again, a consumer entity, a commercial entity of egg freezing with false promises. Egg freezing clinics rarely talk about success rates in terms of pregnancy. They simply talk about success rates in terms of how many eggs you might get, which doesn't mean a pregnancy, of course. So it's an absolute classic. So your age group has sold egg freezing. My age group has sold collagen. The men I know of my age are sold testosterone. There's some very, very sort of like classic things, and this becomes part of the narrative. So I do a lot of talks on women's health and on menopause, and every talk I give, women ask me about collagen because that is now considered to be part of this sort of health narrative of this age group.
It is kind of do you find when obviously you do a lot of like media work and speaking work,
Mm,
but when you're doing your medical side of your job, like actually, dealing with patients, do you
mm.
find you're almost seeing like less people, like are people coming to you and saying I'm deficient in this rather than asking, like giving you actual symptoms and saying what do you think this could be?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, we do get quite a lot of that. We get quite a lot of that now because there's quite a lot of at-home testing. And unfortunately, with the at-home testing, people are not sort of they're not sort of followed up or supported in the testing. So they come back into NHS GP surgeries. And yeah, absolutely. It's very common now for people to say in the NHS, what do you think of these supplements I'm taking? Or I take this, why am I getting ill? You know, why am I tired? I'm taking so and so, as you just mentioned, ashwagandha. I'm taking ashwagandha, so I shouldn't be ill. We sometimes, it's quite dangerous. We get people who opt into those type of supplements instead of real medicine. I think, one of the most sort of dangerous aspects to me is this sort of the lie of health that people are being sold. So for millennia, we know what keeps people healthy. We may have not understood science or medicine, but we've known what keeps people healthy. And that is sleeping, eating well, moving, socializing, being with people, happiness, fresh air, sunshine, all of those things. And they're still true today. But people are being sort of sold, you have to use this particular health tech so you sleep properly, so you are healthy. You have to use this so you're going to live longer. You have to use this so you're going to live longer. And it's really wrong, actually, because none of these things are proven to do anything, and people really are being sold a lie. And I suppose that's just a sort of extrapolation of what social media is like anyway. We all know it's all smoke and mirrors, and people aren't really living as we're seeing them on social media. But people are really being given false promises about health, about longevity, investing a huge amount of money often in these things, whether it's certain types of health tech or certain supplements. And it doesn't translate into health. So it doesn't mean that somebody's not going to get cancer. It doesn't mean that somebody's not going to get depression. But the adverts are marketed sort of very, 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 very cleverly so that people think that they're buying into some guarantee of future health.
Well, I've definitely taken us on a massive tangent there, but I think it's a really important conversation to have, kind of about the
For sure.
marketing and things that go hand in hand. And I do think that with the GLP-1s, it's similar as well. I mean, they are kind of saying if you've tried everything else, then look at GLP-1s in most of the ads that I've seen anyway, which I think is good. But there's lots of reasons why people will take these medications, and some of it is self-esteem, not being happy about how you look. And if we go back to this idea of the hair loss,
Mm.
you know, those kind of side effects surely are like psychologically also damaging to people. What would you say is kind of like, uh, do you stop if you see hair loss? Is it just kind of like, will the hair come back? Basically, is this kind of something to be worried
Mm.
about if you see hair loss from taking these medications?
I think the sort of main thing with hair loss with GLP-1s is that it sort of speaks to, I suppose, the bigger question about GLP-1s. Now, I prescribe GLP-1s and I look
Mm-hmm.
after a lot of people who are on them. So I'm very used to them as a medication. I personally think they are miracle drugs, but I think they are miracle drugs for people who need them because they have health problems related to obesity, or They are, miracle drugs, for example, if you've got, a background of type 2 diabetes or something like that. There's actually a lot of people who take GLP-1 who don't like them. They give them side effects. They don't work, maybe. There are people who don't respond to them. There are people who find that they really feel ill on them. So they're miracle drugs in people for whom they work. And the in a way, the hair loss thing is very good because it shows people, yeah, this might be a miracle drug, but actually it's not miraculous for everybody. It comes with side
Yeah.
effects. Most people I see who are taking them have some sort of digestive discomfort, either diarrhea or constipation. And there will be people who have hair loss that is so significant on the GLP-1 that actually they don't want to continue. And as I say, that's an illustration of, like, the bigger sort of more, I suppose, profound discussion around these medications. If you are losing your hair on a GLP-1, it's important. Well, I mean, I would always recommend that you take GLP-1s with a doctor in a clinic as opposed to just buying them online, because then you're supported through all of this, and you're also supported through the doses and maybe not taking too much and taking
Yeah.
smaller amounts, which may help you lose weight slower and therefore slow down the hair loss as well. And also, doctors can look at whether or not you're iron deficient or other things and actually recommend what other things you should be doing in terms of your nutrition and supplements, as we've talked about. So, I suppose my message would be, if you are losing your hair, first of all, that shouldn't surprise you because it's a known side effect. So you should have been warned about that. But it's a sign that perhaps you need to be, going back to the person prescribing, or if you're not being prescribed by a doctor, think about doing this with a doctor.
Right. So it is no reason to panic, of course. There's a lot of headlines make it sound very sensationalized, but it is just a minor side effect. I mean, we do see it a lot in, you know, postpartum women will lose hair. Like, is it kind of similar to that, where like it can come back and, you know, it's not.
Well, women
Um,
women lose hair postpartum because of the drop in the female hormone estrogen. So that's the same reason women lose hair when they're menopausal. And as we said before as well, sort of like big life change. But also
yeah.
there are women who actually postpartum are losing hair because they're iron deficient or because they have an undiagnosed thyroid problem. So we do have to be very careful about just saying, oh, it's not a problem at all, don't worry about it. And actually balancing that out with not panicking. So it's fine if it's something you can talk to a doctor about and maybe check whether or not there's nothing else going on. But for most people, it will be a side effect of losing a lot of weight.
Okay. Okay. So definitely, just kind of with everything, it's always consult your doctor. Definitely make sure you're in contact with a physician if you're worried about anything that's happening. And also, like, it is the best way to take a medication like this rather than buying it online, would you say?
Yeah, exactly. It's the best way of doing it. You're getting that support. I know from my NHS practice, we get a lot of people phoning in who are not being supported in their weight loss journey. They're being sold weight loss medications, but when there's a side effect like hair loss or one of the other ones, they're not given any support and they end up having to come to the GP.
Yeah.
So if that's happening to you, then it's worth questioning, should you be doing it with that organization?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, Dr. Ellie Cannon, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
That's all from us here at the Wellness Report. Please subscribe down below for more interviews just like this one.